James Cybulski joins us from Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver Radio and the host of the Waggle podcast. Been far too long since I've visited with this gentleman. We go back a very long ways. James, we're talking first of all about the CFL potentially having an all-star game. The viewer vote here is 50-50. Where would you vote on that and why?
I don't see it working. I mean, I think when the players get behind it, yes. I think any opportunity to make more money, sure. Would it draw? Maybe. And it's funny because some people would be skeptical about. I just wonder if you're playing already a 20-game season, an 18-game season. Does it make sense? I'm still surprised the Pro Bowl is still going, to be quite honest with you, with the idea of all the talk of health and safety surrounding the game of pro football, and that they were talking about adding another game. And I get it; it's not a blow-up sort of, NFL blitz style like the old video game, but I don't know. I just don't know if there's an appetite for it, and that late in the season. Here's the other thing, Rod. It's already cold. It's wintertime in most of the country. Where do you do it? How do you hold it? Do you do it during Grey Cup week? Is there an appetite to do it midweek? I don't see it. Logistically, it feels complicated.
I'm glad you said that, James. Is very interesting, and these are the reasons that I said to Darren, you'll be a lot more people voting no than you think. And let me ask you this. You're a guy waving the CFL flag in Vancouver. What are the challenges associated with that, A? And B, we were talking that if we did do an all-star game, it would be on potentially Vancouver Islands, plus 8 there today. You could actually do it. But first of all, what's it like waving the CFL flag in Vancouver? Easy or not so easy?
It's incredibly hard right now. I mean, it's borderline apathetic, the CFL. And we talk often in the last, how many years have we talked about the struggle and the challenge that Toronto has had, in the Canadian Football League, and that the Canadian Football League has had in the market of Toronto, right? The Argos have an amazing stadium. They might have the best stadium, and with all due respect to Mosaic, they've got a high-end facility that, BMO Field in Toronto, and, it's been nicely managed, it's a nice size, more intimate. Mosaic's great. You look at the model where Investors Field and in Winnipeg, Tim Hortons in Hamilton, all these newer stadiums in the CFL, and the Argos can't draw. The Lions have problem number one is BC Place Stadium. It's a 60,000 seat dome stadium that is simply way too big for the market of Vancouver. And secondly, this is a Canucks town first and foremost, and pretty much at the end of that. But the Lions have just struggled with relevancy. It's almost like they built the new stadium, or when they renovated BC Place Stadium in 2011, it was this dream sort of finish in 2011 that they, come back from the big losing skid, they win the Grey Cup, and everybody rides off into the sunset happy. So it was almost like the bookend of, the Cup run didn't work out so well for the Canucks that year, but we got a Grey Cup at the end of the year. Last year was the Olympics, and almost like people have been done with the CFL since. They struggle with attendance again this year. Obviously, the record was an issue, but Mike Riley didn't really help sell tickets as hoped, and sparse crowds. You're seeing crowds well under 20,000 now, and I don't know if they'll find a day where there's a relevancy to that football team until they get out of BC Place, because it is not an enticing place to go watch the CFL anymore.
James, yeah, and that's the million-dollar question is, how do you make the league, the it thing for the younger generation so that they want to buy tickets? How do we make it popular again with the younger generation?
Well, that's the bazillion-dollar question that has been ongoing for, the last 20 years, and we keep hearing that, they skipped a generation. Straight up, I'm 45 years old. And I am right on that cut line of the generation that people are 50-50 on the CFL. Older generation, yes. Younger generation, no. And I look at it like at my radio station here in Vancouver at Sportsnet 650, everybody, all the younger guys outside of maybe one or two, Scott Rintoul, who used to be the voice of the Lions, who works with us, Scott's a CFL guy. Andrew Walker will talk a little bit. Walker's from Saskatchewan, so obviously he's got love for the CFL as well to a degree. But pretty much everybody else, they're all guys in their early 30s, and none of them like the CFL. I don't know what the answer is. Obviously, an investment with gambling. I mean, guys love betting. You've got to find a way to increase that. I know they've tried to create fantasy football games in recent years. Maybe that's something that, you got to increase in that. But, stars sell, and players, I wonder this, and I had a conversation with somebody not too long ago, and they made a really good point that, the CFL has struggled with star power in recent years, and a lot of those great quarterbacks that used to find their way up here in the Canadian Football League, Rod, you can probably speak to this way better than I can. Those guys are all now prototype NFL players now. Russell Wilson would have been a CFL guy 20 years ago, right? Kyler Murray would have been a CFL quarterback 20 years ago. Baker Mayfield, all these guys that are, Robert RG3, and obviously he had health issues, but so many quarterbacks that were kind of on the smaller side, that could run like the wind and were great athletes, they didn't necessarily get the look in the NFL that they deserved. Now the way that the game has changed, the run-pass option is so important, and the great athletes are now becoming the quarterbacks more and more, as opposed to the traditional drop-back passer that the NFL long clamored for the first, 40 years of existence. The game has changed, and I think, unfortunately, the CFL has kind of suffered as a result of the NFL's game.
It's so funny you said that. You've just given us a topic for the next hour I won't keep you around for. But the biggest stars in the CFL upcoming now, Cody Fajardo, Nick Arbuckle, even a Matt Nichols, they're all 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". So it's like they're behind what the NFL's been doing, which is exactly what James is saying. But it's not like you don't get enough talking about the Canucks, James, but I got to say this. We had your boy Rick Dollywall on here a few weeks ago, and he didn't see any way that the Canucks could just get a foothold in the Western Conference standings or the Pacific Division. And now here we sit at the All-Star break, and they're number one in the division. What the hell has happened with the Vancouver Canucks in the last month?
Well, you know what? Funny how things go. 5 weeks ago, people in this market were screaming, fire Travis Green, fire Jim Benning. The Canucks went on a 7-game win streak to help change that narrative. They lost 2, and they bounced back, winning 4 of their next 5. So they've won 11 of their last 14, and it's amazing how tight it is. Like, if they lose to San Jose last Saturday, the final game before they go into the bye week and the All-Star break, they're on the outside looking in at a playoff spot. The West is bananas right now. Like, after St. Louis, there's essentially 2 points that separates 8 teams. And I'm talking about Colorado and Dallas and Vancouver and Edmonton and Calgary and Vegas and Arizona. Look, the difference for Vancouver this year, they obviously went out and spent in the offseason to try to address some needs. They needed to get better on their back end. They've gotten significantly better, and a big reason for that has been the revelation of Quinn Hughes. Very likely a Rookie of the Year candidate. Could be in the eyes of a few, I know, including Brian Burke, saying that he's their Rookie of the Year. He's been such a game changer for this back end, a mobile, puck-moving defenseman that the Canucks have been around for 50 years. They've never really had a guy quite like this. And he's playing 22 minutes a night as a rookie. It's remarkable what he's doing. Secondly, Jacob Markstrom, after 6 years, has become a legit goaltender. He has become a difference maker for this hockey club. He has been an all-star, and rightly so this season. And he's a pending unrestricted free agent, so the Canucks are going to have to pony up this year. It's a good year to have a contract year, to have a career year when you're in your contract year. But you know what? The Canucks are benefiting from that. Elias Pedersen's obviously, he's a special player up front. But Bo Horvat's finally woken up in the last month as well. So now they're starting to spread out the offense. They gave up a first-rounder to get J.T. Miller last year, and that has worked out really, really well for Vancouver through the first 50 games of the season. So Quinn Hughes, Jacob Markstrom, and spread out scoring. Guys starting to realize their potential. Jake Virtanen's on pace for 20 goals this season, and he looked like a big whiff when they took him 6th overall in 2014. And it took a long time, but he's starting to finally show that he can be the player that they hoped he could be.
Awesome. Well, James, that's a very good Vancouver Canucks update. My last question is, I miss seeing your face. How are things in your world? Are you good?
I'm excellent, man. I'm doing great. I've got, I think I might be the most annoying man in the province of British Columbia right now with an ad campaign for a natural gas company that had been running for the last 4 months. Outside of that, about a year ago, it was announced that I was the new play-by-play voice for the NHL video game from Electronic Arts from EA Sports. So to be part of a very select group that's included Doc Emmerich, Jim Houston, Gary Thorne, and to be part of that and to be part of a video game that I grew up playing, and now to be the voice of it, it is just a dream come true, and I'm actually on my way to go do another voice session for the video game there now. So that's been a lot of fun, having a chance to work with Snoop Dogg for the video game and working alongside Ray Ferraro. It's a pleasure. And aside from that, weekday mornings, 5:30 to 9, Sportsnet 650 is where you can find me, Hot Rod. How are you doing?
I am on top of the world. On top of the world, James. I'm having a lot of fun in life, too. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And I got to make my way out to BC this spring, so I'll shoot you a note. And by the way, I could name 5 more annoying people than you in Vancouver or BC, starting with Andrew Walker. So don't worry too much about that, man. Just keep crushing it.
Rod, Dollywall's number 1 on that list. Walker would be number 2 or a 1A. But, yeah, that's a good start right there.
All right. Thanks, James.
Cheers.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.